So greetings everyone. I, so we have all our previous secretaries-general present here, from Raghav Bhaiya to Aditya Bhaiya, Vedansh Bhaiya, Naman Bhaiya, Raajveer, and Abhiram. We have all of them here present here. And the floor will be theirs. We'll be speaking the most here. And I hope that it will be an enlightening session for each and every boy who is present here. I would highly recommend all of you to, make notes if you want to make, because, there will be something said which you might want to remember, because we are going to talk about how LMUN is playing a visual in our lives right now, and how to take an example of these people, how it has. So the first topic that I'm going to take a discussion right here is that, everything that we do, everything we are associated with, it has some impact on our lives or the other. So my first question that I'm going to drop on all of you at once is that how has LMUN, and participating in LMUN or organizing LMUN has, brought in a change in your lives, both professional as well as personal lives, and how do you think it has molded your personality? So we will start one by one. So yes, Naman Bhaiya has raised his hand.
No, that was just for you to give me permission to unmute myself. I think we should go ahead with the senior most secretaries-general we have here.
Sure, Raghav Bhaiya.
Okay, I think that's a good question, because if you're participating in an activity in school, right, that requires some amount of compromise, in the sense that you're not participating in some other activity, right? So it makes sense to think about what you're going to achieve out of the activity, if you're really going to invest yourself into that. And when we started with MUNs, and that was the start of MUNs, not just in La Martiniere, but in Lucknow, and I think UP generally. When I was in class 9, I think our approach towards, debating, for example, and all other extracurriculars was very different from the sort of activity that, an MUN offered. And at that point of time, I remember we'd received an invitation from one of the oldest MUNs, and I just saw it at the desk of a teacher. And none of us knew what it was. We'd been receiving invitations for a couple of years, but we'd never sent a delegation anywhere. So when I had a look at it, I went back home and I started researching about what this activity is. And I subsequently discussed it with Mr. McFarland. And he then put together a team of students. When I was in class 9, that included people who were in class 12. And we sort of tried to, come up with a structure to organize an MUN, to train ourselves and, everybody in school, so that we could eventually start venturing out and hopefully organizing a conference at a national scale eventually. And then, of course, we got in touch with Ma'am Siddiqui, and we started, just making a blueprint for what LMUN should be like. I remember when we were discussing names, the different names that sort of came up were LMCL MUN, because LMC MUN was already a thing. Then we thought of Conman, Constantia MUN. We just thought of so many names, but none of them really sounded nice, except for LMUN, which is what we finally settled on. And before we organized LMUN, we'd gone for a few conferences to different cities. And back then, MUNing wasn't as popular as it is today in schools. It was more of a college level activity. So with Ma'am Siddiqui, for example, we went to BITS Pilani. We also went to RML and all of these different conferences, because there were just no school conferences except like one or two, which we received invitations from, and they were quite expensive to attend because they were all these fancy 5-star hotels hosting kids for 3 days. So yeah, we started off with these college level MUNs, and thankfully we did decently well at it, considering it was, the first time that La Martiniere was doing MUNs. And that was a great sort of encouragement for everybody, I think, in the delegation. I mean, I remember after 2 conferences, when, like, not everybody won awards, I was having this discussion with Mr. McFarland, where we were just thinking about, whether it's possible to start, this activity in school, and whether it'll really take off. And back then he told me that, like, whenever you want to start something new, it's always going to be from the smallest scale, and like that should not dishearten anybody, right? And when we then started the MUN club, I remember nobody wanted to join initially, and like there were some 5-7 members in the club, and like nobody was really putting in any effort. And so of course through Ma'am Siddiqui's encouragement and Mr. McFarlane's encouragement, like more and more people started coming in, and we got together. Like in my senior batches, nobody as such was really interested in the activity, also because I think at that point of time they'd become quite used to the sort of activities that they were doing, and they were doing really well at it, so they didn't want to invest their time into something new, which was at the absolute initial stage in school. So thankfully in my batch we were able to have a group of people who were ready to invest themselves into this idea, and that of course includes people like Devansh Jolly and Sinha, and all of these people. Like I'm sure all of you know them, right? So Tarun, Izan, all of these guys. So after we had a sort of team that was ready to put in the time and effort into this, it was much easier, right? Because we were able to contact people from outside to come to La Martiniere and take training sessions for us, because we really had no clue about how to go about it. Then we also contacted people through Ma'am Siddiqui, because thankfully Ma'am Siddiqui's like Hamza and all of her children also were college going people, and they could put us in touch with people who'd been doing MUNs in the college circuit and all of that. And I think when I look back at this entire journey, like it seems to me to be very fulfilling, not just professionally, but also personally, right? Because I mean, all activities in school can be fun, right? And MUNs of course give you some sort of academic exposure, so that's that. But at the end of the day, I think the best thing that it gave me was memories and so many opportunities to bond with not just my batchmates and seniors, but also my juniors, right? The fact that I graduated 6 years back, but I'm still in touch with all of you is because of MUNs, right? And when you ask me the question, so coming back to what you asked me, how did it change your life? I think it changed my life because it put me in touch with a lot of people, and it gave me a lot of relationships that added a lot of value in my life and continue to do so. And it's another opportunity for me to stay in touch with La Martiniere, right? And I think that's really invaluable for me personally.
Thank you so much, Raghav Bhaiya, on your insights. Now, Aditya Bhaiya, what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Makes me feel super old thinking about stuff that happened, 8 years ago. It's kind of crazy to think about that. But to Raghav's point, I attended actually one of those training sessions, and I didn't know what a model UN was. Had no idea. Had just been hearing the term MUN all over the campus, and I wanted to try it out. To give you context, to give all of you context, I used to be a really shy kid back in middle school, barely used to speak up in class, debates, participated here and there, but used to, write down my speech in all its entirety, in its paragraphs, form, stuff like that. Once I started doing MUNs, obviously I was a shy kid, first 1 or 2 MUNs, took me some time to get used to the concepts, took me some time to speak up and, even interact with people. But personally for me, two biggest, takeaways from doing model events all of these years was one, obviously, as Raghav mentions again, an opportunity to give back to La Martiniere and even connect to La Martiniere. This is happening. I'm here today just because of this kind of model event connect we have and the bond of, over La Martiniere we share today as well. And secondly, for me, I think if you are, if you're a shy kid or if you're just, someone who loves to interact with people, and lots of even go beyond your comfort zone. 100%, I would definitely encourage, strongly encourage you to participate in model events. Why? It forces you to go out of your comfort zone, talk to people you would not otherwise get the opportunity to interact with. For me, that was a humongous step towards, kind of breaking away my shyness and, speaking up in classrooms, talking to as many people as possible, learning about their interests. So those are my big two takeaways.
That's crazy. Now, Vedansh, what do you want to say about it?
Yeah, I think like just to add on to what Raghav and Aditya have already said, because I really don't think I can top that off. Because like whatever Aditya also said here about, getting a chance to speak or being that confident in order to interact with people, speaking freely in a crowd, or the fact that, by the end of this session, I'm sure most of you would think that, oh my God, these panelists talk so much. I think that quality in itself, is like owed to, MUNs in general. And the fact that, all of us got a chance to organize LMUN and at some point even participate in it, I think everything that Raghav and Aditya have said is something that was my takeaway from it as well. And apart from all those things, I'm sure everyone here on the panel and everyone here who has already participated in LMUN or organized it will also agree with me, was that in Martiniere, the kind of liberty that we have to make decisions while organizing the conference, or the kind of responsibility that is bestowed upon us in order to decide certain things for the school and decide what's best for the school or what's best for us in conjunction with what's best for the school, makes you responsible enough to grow as a person. It makes you think that what is that one thing that's important for you in order to succeed in life, and you are able to make those kind of choices. Because while in school, we know we have our parents, we have our teachers, we have teachers like Ma'am Siddiqui, we have Mr. McFarlane, we have so many other teachers to guide us through the processes. But once you enter college, once you enter professional life, it's difficult for you to rely on someone for anything that comes on you on an immediate basis. And then you need to make those choices, and those choices, like, you can excel at them only once you have practiced them out, once you have been in that space to make such decisions for yourself. And later, even if that decision turns out to be wrong, not regret it, because that's a more important thing to remember. And I think, like, all of us, at least me for that matter, I owe that to Martiniere, because the kind of liberty and responsibility that we were trusted with, especially when it came to organizing LMUN, I think it really changed me as a person and made me more aware of what I want for myself. So I think that's my take on it.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the fact that we are given responsibility about so many tasks, from bringing in sponsorships to contacting the keynote speakers, all these things just develop us throughout time, and participating in the conference, so that helps us research. So all the things, overall development happens, the holistic development that we talk about, it happens through participating and organizing. So Naman Bhaiya, over to you.
I pretty much I think Raghav Bhaiya, Aditya, and Vedansh Bhaiya, all three of them, they covered it comprehensively. To agree with one of the points, as Raghav Bhaiya said, it gives you an opportunity, and a very good one at that, to bond with not just your seniors as well as your juniors, but your teachers as well. To an extent, I would say that the bond which you have with your teachers throughout the conference, just putting the conference together, maybe in the final days of the conference or even the days leading up to the conference. So you cover a broad spectrum of people with whom you're interacting and bonding, and there's a give and take of respect. So that is one thing which I felt. And beyond that, on a professional level, I think activities such as an MUN, they give you the ability to ask questions, and smart questions at that. So that is something that helps you in all spheres of your life. The ability to, know what to ask someone and what to say to someone when someone is asking you something back. I think these are a couple of things that I'll just add on to what has been said previously. But I absolutely agree. It's just a phenomenal experience to be a part of a conference and a society like La Martiniere Model International Society.
So most of you are juniors present here, but I'll tell you something from my personal experience because I was at your place 2, 3 years ago. But now that I'm hosting this meeting, I know for a fact that it is completely unscripted. So whatever we are talking about, whatever questions that I'm asking and whatever answers that they are giving, everything is unscripted. So earlier, if I was asked to do the same thing 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But the fact that I'm able to do that and all these people are able to answer and so such elaborate answers are being given by them is the fact that we all owe something or the other to this society or extracurricular activities in general and the liberty that we are given at Martiniere. So Raajveer, coming on to you, the Secretary General of the conference that got cancelled after one day. How was your experience and what have you taken, learned from it?
Thank you so much for that little barb at the very start. Yeah, my conference only lasted one day, but the experience of running the society, of being able to interact with my seniors, my juniors, those who were my peers, my teachers, people within the administration of the institution itself, that I would say is invaluable. But like I would want to like try to extrapolate upon the point of confidence, because as someone who's 5'4" on a good day, and who, when it comes to physicality, right, in a packed room full of speakers who are aggressive, who want to give out their opinion, who want to win that award, it was a very big journey for me to undertake, to have the kind of confidence to be able to establish presence within the room. And I think on a more general basis, when it comes to any kind of profession, especially one where you have to be assertive, where you have to be able to give your opinion, defend your opinion, and just as importantly, be able to interact whilst keeping yourself on a particular position within that room. I think all of those are qualities which MUNs kind of hammer into you, because you really need to be someone who's confident in the opinion you're giving. And that confidence also comes from the efficiency you kind of end up developing in terms of how you research, because that is another invaluable skill in whatever field you go, wherever you need to do some kind of research, right, some kind of reading in general before giving an opinion, an informed opinion at least. All of those things kind of become easier once you get into, I would say, the crux of what MUNs are about, and that is the ability to research and then the ability to disseminate that information. And all of those come through MUNs. And when it comes to the society, when it comes to organizing, I think, like they said, it's an
You're
liberty that is kind of heaped up upon you. And all of those are, I would say, kind of like a game changer. They really do change how you look at every aspect of every event that is happening in school, because you now know what is happening behind the scenes, how much effort every single person, from the administration to our teachers to our juniors, every single person, how much effort they've put in for every single detail of every single like event within that larger umbrella of LMUN or Constantia or anything like that. You kind of see how much effort goes in, and you appreciate a lot more, even if it only lasts for one day, like it did in my case. So yeah, thank you.
So that was a wonderful answer, and I'm sure you learned a lot. And personally, working with you made me also realize a lot of things and learn a lot of things. Now, the person with whom I have personally worked the most, Abhiram, and the Secretary General of the first online edition of LMUN. What do you have to say about what you have learned from organizing MUNs and participating in it in general?
Thank you, Kinjalk. So while I was listening to all my seniors, I was just contemplating that I could not add anything to what they have said, because most of them have covered. And what I have got through this is that what matters the most is the memories that we make and the bond that we share with Lamartner and the society. Because if I see the crux of what everyone has said, it is because of the liberty and freedom which has been given to us running and managing the society. It is because of that we are so connected to it, with teachers at our back and the boys at the forefront of organizing an event at a national or an international scale, for that matter, is something which evolved me as a person. Because as Aditya said, I was also like sort of an introvert in class 8, 7th or 8th. But when I was introduced to this concept of money, I first talked to Naman Bhaiya and then Vedansh Bhaiya, and that was my first session of how MUN works. And one thing which was taught to me by my seniors, and I guess that is the most important thing that I learned, is that whenever you participate at Model UN conferences, don't just strive for winning. because whenever you do that, you stress out yourself and you are not focusing upon the very important aspect, that is learning. Because when we go to a conference, we interact with so many people, with so many young minds. There's a lot to learn. And when we go through that process, that is learning, then we don't stress out ourselves. And what we do is genuinely the best that gets out of us. So that is one thing which I've learned. And secondly, it has taught me management, sort of managing an event and also managing the society. Because like talking to some of my seniors, because I'm about to enter my college life, they told me a lot about different societies. So I guess LMUN society has given me that exposure so that I can be well versed with how a society works in general and how an event is organized. And at the end, we could strive for as many positions in school as we can. But after like passing out now, what I have realized is the memories and the bonds that we share are the most important thing, and that stays for us. That stays with us forever. So thank you so much.
So talking about organizing LMUN and participating in MUNs, now we need to understand that all these MUNs are 2 to 3 day conferences, and it takes time to prepare. So most of the people who are present here, not just the panelists, but also the people who are present in the audience, we all and me as well, we all have personally faced one problem, that is our parents. They actually get frustrated at one point in time that why are you always participating in model events? I mean, is there nothing except MUNs in your life? Because I have personally seen Raajveer's mom scolding him, Abhiram's mom scolding him, my own mom scolding myself. So this is something which I wanted to know from my seniors, especially Raghav, Vedansh, and Aditya, and Naman Bhaiya, with whom I did not get the chance to work very personally with or very close to with. So how was the reaction of your parents back then? Because you brought in the concept and it was completely new. So how was the reaction back then?
Okay, so we'll go in the same order, I guess. I think when you're in class 12, the experiences are quite similar. I was grateful that my mom and dad are not very strict in general, and they let me do what I want. Right. So, I mean, thankfully, there wasn't a lot of pressure on that front. I didn't have to attend 4-hour coachings every day. I was not preparing for IIT or whatever. Right. So that gave me a lot of leeway in class 11 and 12 to do things that I genuinely felt passionate about. And so that was not like a huge problem for me personally. I know for a fact it was for some of my friends who were in the secretariat, right? People like my subjects were history, political science, economics, math, and eco. I did not have like PCM, but for those of my friends who did, I mean, they were missing classes constantly, right? And they were also missing not just like their school classes, but also their tuition classes, because we used to be sitting in school till, I don't know, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock every day, just, I don't know, living on sheermal kebabs from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And when that was the case, I mean, everybody dealt with it differently, right? I mean, because everybody realizes that there's value in pursuing activities apart from your studies, and it really is possible to manage both, right? Everybody in my secretariat who put in that sort of time and, who had to appear for these really grueling entrance exams, all of them managed to do both perfectly well, and everybody is doing really well today. So that way, yeah, I would definitely say that while academics are perhaps like, the most important factor for you to consider when thinking about apportioning time between different activities, it's also important to realize the value that, activities like MUNs bring to not just, your CV, but also in general to the sorts of skills that you develop. And that's something that Martiniere has always been, known for. It's never just been about the academics in school. It's always been about so many other opportunities that we get being here, right? So just to add on to the sorts of organizational skills that are required to pull off a conference like this, I mean, it's now when I think about it, I really think it was a lot of power for students to wield, right? Because I mean, we were fully responsible, and we continue to be, right, for everything from printing placards to allotting countries to handling money and keeping accounts to deciding menus to ensuring that the gavels for the prize ceremony are polished perfectly. I mean, that's just a lot of responsibility for students to wield, and especially because you're also selecting people, who are going to participate, who are going to go for other conferences, who are going to come and judge. It also means that it's important for anybody who's wielding that power to wield it judiciously and to be aware of the responsibility that comes when teachers trust you with that sort of responsibility. So I think in terms of just the sorts of things that all of us learn at that conference, I would say is well worth the time and effort that you have to justify to your parents in order to participate in this. And yeah, I'd be excited to know what the experiences of others have been in this regard.
Now you all know how, if your parents ask you what have you been doing in the names of model events, you know how to justify your answer. Now, Aditya Bhaiya, moving on to you. What used to happen with you?
Yes, I could not agree more with Raghav on how much value you get out of committing time towards this activity. I was a science student. I was one of those unfortunate PCM students, and I can tell you I was a very bad PCM student at it too. But it's a trade-off I had to consciously make, right? I think explaining to your parents is very key over here, and explaining to them that there is a balance that could be possible between academics and extracurriculars. And if you think about it, the most value you would attain would be from the synergy between the two, where you are spending equal times, maybe judiciously in those coaching classes, or even in school, and at the same time participating in model events or any of the extracurricular activity you have a passion for. I think, to Raghav's point, I think it was an unreal experience for me personally when I was first I was a part of the society, participated as a delegate, and then on the organizational end, obviously was a part of the secretariat for 2 years. And if you think about it, it's an unreal experience. You are 17 years old, or you're barely 17, 18 years old, and you're running an organization which is over 250, 300 members. I've lived in the US for the past 4 years. I've met people from all over the world, and I can tell you that not many people can speak as highly of their high school experience, because the liberties and the freedom wasn't provided to them. They didn't have the opportunity still Martiniere provides to us. So I think, all in all, I think it's a trade-off you have to make, and you have to be you have to be very smart about it. You have to study, and you have to do well in the extracurriculars, but you attain maximum, you attain really good value, and you attain it's a great experience overall. And I definitely encourage you to do try at least and try and juggle between the two together.
So maintaining a balance between the two is equally important. So that's one thing that you all have to keep into consideration while participating as well as organizing model events. Vedansh Bhaiya, over to you.
Yeah, so again, couldn't agree more with Raghav and Aditya here. With respect to me, my parents, so I started participating in class 9th, and in class 9th and 10th, I clearly remember like there were a couple of times when I had to make Raghav and like my seniors like Jolly and everyone else speak to my parents as well a couple of times, because I was like, listen, man, they aren't agreeing, and you need to do something here, and things like those. But so they weren't really supportive in class 9th and 10th, and I think like now that I think about it, it really used to bother me back then. But now that I think about it, and even when I thought about it in class 11th and 12th, when they became comparatively, less strict, it was something which was there because they did not want me to waste my time, because they did not really know if I was, capable of pulling this off. So I think a very important point is also about being serious about this activity, because you can participate in it as much as you want, but being serious and proving it to your parents that, listen, I can do this, is also an important aspect of the same. Now, the career that I am planning to go into. Like I'm pursuing law right now, and I think a lot of my interest in the same comes from my motivation back in the days to participate in these activities, because these things really interested me. Apart from how I was greatly influenced back in the days by Raghav and his decisions, another thing which really motivated me to pursue this career is also the fact that I was really interested in MUNs back then, and it really uh, fascinated me to know more about the things that were there. And when my parents saw the same, they were just like, okay, he has the interest in it, he has the caliber, so why not just give him that chance? And so my parents personally are not that strict again, but they were just always worried about me wasting time and worried about how I might not be able to manage it. Most of the time, I think the first 3 years, that's 9th, 10th, and 11th, I was unable to manage time as well, because I was really lacking on my studies. My grades were constantly going down. But I think by the end of it, it was all well and good, because it made me land up where I am. And it makes me really happy today to be where I am today and to be the kind of person that I am today. And I think all of that, a large chunk of it, is owed to my decision of participating in MUNs, and a lot of it is owed to Martiniere in general. So now that I think about it, now that my parents think about it, they are just happy. And most of the time, my mom is just like, how do you know this? Like very recently only, I was speaking with my dad about the entire thing that's going on in Afghanistan. And my mom was just like, how do you know about this? Like, how do you know so much about it? So I think now that they also think about it, it's just something that they are also happy about. But yeah, back in the days, it is a difficult thing to convince them. But in order to convince anyone for that matter, whether it's your parents or someone in your professional capacity, you just need to prove yourself to them. You just need to prove that, yeah, I will be able to pull this off. And I think that's a very important thing. So I think that's like how it was for me, and that's my take on it.
So it somehow actually helps you to, turn on your awareness shift, because you are aware of what is happening in the world. So whenever you are speaking, you are adding value to whoever you are speaking to. So that's one thing which actually makes a difference. So Naman Bhaiya, over to you. What do you have to say about it?
My experience is pretty much the same as all three of the previous secretary generals. Fortunately, my parents were a little less involved as compared to the others, perhaps. But there were occasions where my grandfather would drive to the school late in the evening to pick me up forcibly, and Vedansh had to speak. Like when I was in class 11 in the secretariat, Vedansh had to speak to my parents on a couple of occasions as well. So not my proudest of moments, but yeah, there is pressure from parents as well, because it's understandable. You are committing your valuable time in the most valuable years of your life, perhaps, to an activity which does take a lot of time and effort and a lot of energy as well, because it drains you out. So it is justified, but at the same time, if it's something that you're really passionate about, as was in my case, not in a professional capacity, but yeah, perhaps in a personal and in the capacity of my school life. If it's something that you are really passionate about and not doing it casually, like just for perhaps spending a weekend over at some place, then that time and that effort, it's all worth it, because it is at the end of the day a very positive activity. It is giving you, it is contributing to your personality and all the other benefits that the previous three secretaries have stated. It's all true. It's all correct. It was all applicable in my case as well. But at the end of the day, I would again repeat what all three of them have said, since this is to you guys who are in the school. Academics is at the end of the day the most important thing. It is better to learn that the easy way than the hard way. So commit time judiciously to such an activity. Decide how how important this is to you, and you can commit time according to that. And of course, parents, the pressure will obviously always be there. They are your parents at the end of the day. There'll be pressure for everything. So yeah, it is at the end of the day up to you to decide how well you can balance, and it works out. It does work out in the end, as with everyone. Yeah, that's about it.
And I absolutely agree, because Naman Bhaiya is actually, an example of how he balanced things. Because I remember when it was LMU in 2018, and I was in class 9th back then, and it was my first year in LMU and OC. So it was after the conference that all the other secretariat members, along with two to four, OC members, who went to RF Castle to celebrate that we have finally organized a successful conference. But Naman Bhaiya had gone back to his home, and he was studying physics back then. So he's an example of maintaining balance. So that's what you can learn from him. Now coming on to Raajveer. Raajveer, what do you have to say about it?
Uh, what else? I think a lot has been already said. I think most has been said, to be honest. But on a personal front, my parents were a lot more supportive than I expected them to be, because it is an activity that is still mythical to parents, right? Because obviously they did not have MUNs as this predominant force as it is today, right? And it's weird for them to wonder what their children are doing on weekends, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, going to this, other institutions, spending most of their day there. It's not quite easy to get through with them, and it's not quite easy for them to buy it as well, because obviously it's the skepticism is there, and it's skepticism that is born out of, I would say, the need to protect their child, the need to guide their child onto a path that they think is right, and that's, like Naman said, completely justified on their part. And just as importantly for us is that we have to be empathetic to them, and we have to be like willing to have a a discussion with them, not a debate but a discussion. We have to be conciliatory to them at that point. And so there's this question in the chat which is kind of like roaming around, which is like, I think, related to this, right? How do you balance these steps? I don't know. I will not give you some kind of advice, because it might work in my context, might not work in yours. Everyone's context and circumstances are extremely different, right? But I think at the end of it, it's a decision, like it's a trade-off, and it's a decision you have to make at every turn, whether you want to go to this conference or not, whether you want to spend this particular month, just judiciously studying this particular subject or this chapter or whatever. And at the end of it, you have to learn to balance it out, because, like, on a personal level, your character does grow from these things, obviously. But academics is extremely important as well, especially in a country where the level of competition keeps increasing each and every year, right? So it really is something that you have to figure out for yourself. There is no actual universal God formula for it, and it's a decision and a journey you have to undertake. You have to do it with, like, I would say, the information that you can fall. There are pitfalls along the way. There are problems that can crop up. There are obstacles that you need to vault. But it's at the end of it, it's really up to you, and it's up to you to decide what you really do with your time. And as long as you're able to justify it to yourself, and as long as you're able to understand why your parents are skeptical, I think you'll do just fine. And truly, honestly, that's all you can really expect.
Um, that was a nice answer to that question. Thank you for adding your thoughts to that discussion. Now, Abhiram, over to you, especially in the technological era where you were always using your phone and you were sitting on your laptop. How was your parents' reaction, and how did you cope up with it?
Yeah, so like my parents are quite supportive, because like I started doing model events from class 9 onwards. So at that time they were sort of like not that much into that particular thing, so they were not permitting me to go to different model event conferences. But when I stepped into class 11, they were quite very supportive. And if talking about our year in 2020, when I was using my phone like almost every day for say 10, 12 hours. So at that point of time, my parents just told me that, okay, whatever you want to do in your school life, you can. But just remember one thing, you need to balance your studies along with it. And till the time I was able to pull that off, it was extremely fine. Because as other panelists also said, academics forms a very important part wherever we go. All these activities that we are doing, at the end of the day, there's a word extracurricular activities attached to it. So it cannot be on the we cannot just ignore our academic side and just indulge into it. But like Raajveer said, we need to balance it, and it's completely subjective how you balance your time. It depends from person to person. So at the end of the day, it's just that how well you balance yourself and how you're able to prove yourself. Yes, I can do MUNs, and at the same time I can perform equally well in my academic side. Because when we do MUNs, like when a kid start doing MUNs, what is in his back of mind? I want to win. Like there were my juniors who were coming to me, ki, Bhaiya, please tell me how to win in my first conference. So when you are striving to winning in MUNs, you would also strive to be as good as you can in the academic side. And if you're balancing it, it's completely fine, I guess.
Thank you, Abhiram, for that answer. Now I'm going to ask one last question. And after that, I'll be opening the floor for all our juniors to drop in their questions so that we'll take their questions as well. And this question that I'm going to ask right now is quite personal to me as well. So the fact that we all have been working in LMUN society and extracurricular, we have been involved in extracurricular activities of the Martiniere in general. There is a lot of competition. Now, academic competition is one thing, but competition among students is another. So there's a lot of competition that is there in school, and it has been there since the very beginning. So how do you cope up with, this competition and the fact that you might, lose out on friends or, your batchmates, you get into fights with people. So everyone, because I know this for a fact that everyone who is present here has personally faced this. So I want to know what your personal point of view is when it comes to competition and dealing with all these things. So starting with Raghav Bhaiya.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to talk about, right? Because I know it's difficult for people who are currently in school to, have a sort of macro perspective about where you are in your life at this point. And of course, like it would be the same for me as somebody who's just graduated from college, right? I can't really think about how important are the things that I'm doing today and how much they'll matter like 10 years from now, right? It's a very difficult thing to do. But one thing that I can tell you from personal experience, from not being very old, of course, right? I'm just 5-6 years older to you guys. That's not much. So when you graduate, I mean, the shine wears off from a lot of goals and objectives that you might have had in school, right? You realize that intermart debate, or that best delegate gavel, or even your class 12 boards, are not the be all and end all for you. And you realize just how trivial some of these things may be over which, you're willing to fight and argue and generally, not take the best way out, because it seems like the easier option at that point of time, or it seems like it's going to personally be the most favorable for you or whatever, right? So the only thing that I can say is that, I mean, right after I graduated, I stopped doing MUNs. I did not do a single MUN in college. I only came back for LMUN to chair. That was my only involvement, right? Because in college, you realize there are other activities that you may want to participate in and that you may want to invest your time in, considering that that's also an important part in your life, right? And an important time in your life. And there are just so many things to explore. And after college is when you'd be expected to, if you're not studying further, I mean, join the workforce in one capacity or another. And therefore, that time in college is also super, super important for you to realize and discover what is it that you really want to do. Because I really think it's, quite difficult for somebody in school, all of us in school, to think about what we want to do for the, next 70, 80 years of our life, right? That seems ridiculous to be making such an important call when you're 17 or 18. So really, I mean, I think it's college that you realize what is it that you want to do. And because of that, you've got to really cut down on the sort of activities that you're participating in, because you want to explore as much as you can, and you want to figure out what is it that, you want to do with your life. So, I mean, the point at the end of it being that a lot of these arguments over which, you might be, I don't know why Kinjalk said losing friendships and all. I hope everything is okay, Kinjalk, on that front. But in any case, I mean, the point is that in 3 years, you realize just how petty that argument was. And as somebody who's gone through that entire process, I mean, you will probably go through it. There's nobody who can see anything, to accelerate that growth process. But at the same point of time, if it is possible, I would say keep that in mind. In 3 years, that argument is not going to matter. That friend that you may have definitely will. So yeah, just try to keep that in mind, as tough as it may sound, I guess.
And as you asked me, so I'm also, covering the fact that there is a lot of unhealthy competition also. So people are fighting among themselves for positions. So that was one thing that I was trying to cover when I talked about losing out on friends. So that's one thing.
Yeah, also, like, just to add another thing is that this competition is never really going to end, right? It's not like you will graduate from school and in college everything is going to be different. It's going to be the same throughout. You will face the same sort of arguments. You are going to face the same sort of competition that again will seem trivial 5 years from then. And even when you join a job, but you're the junior most person over there, and there are 5 people at your level, everybody trying to impress the boss. I mean, it's never going to end, right? So I mean, it's important for you to realize that because competition is a part of our life generally, and like just how this world works. So it's important to navigate those issues in a mature way, right? And I don't see how it's not possible to do that in school, because I think that's where you develop your habits. I think that's where you start becoming the person that you want to be, and every single decision that you make in that regard contributes to the person that you want to be. So I don't see why that process should not start in school.
That was a wonderful answer. I'm sure that I have learned a lot from, during to this. Now, Aditya Bhaiya, if you don't mind, I'd like to give the floor to Naman Bhaiya, as he has just been notified by his professor that he has to attend conference. So, Naman Bhaiya, you have the floor. Thank you so much, Aditya Bhaiya. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize, Aditya and Vedansh. Just need to rush somewhere. That actually happens to coincide with a lot of things that Raghav said. So in college, it's not going to matter. There will be competition, but then you will realize that, I'll pivot around the 3 words Raghav used, because that was a very comprehensive answer. I don't think I agree with anything more than the answer that Raghav gave. Is it's trivial, it's stupid, and it's a little immature to have such events where you'd just ending friendships over competition like this. And this is something which I also do not expect you to understand at 17, 18 years old. That's something you'll only understand once you've gone through the process, once you've graduated technically from that process. But and it's natural. The competition is natural, and the desire to have an outcome of the efforts which you're putting in is again natural. But it does not matter. It's something you'll realize once you have gone through that process yourself. It does not matter what you get out of it at the end of the day. And friendships are, like, quite obviously not worth breaking over things so trivial. That's basically it. I don't think that I think Raghav pretty much covered it. Like, from being the most experienced person obviously on this panel, he knows quite a bit about it perhaps. So I think I don't have anything to add on to that. That's absolutely what I feel and agree with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Naman Bhaiya, and best of luck for your
thank you. Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure having all of you, man. Aditya, Vedansh, Raghav, and Raajveer, and of course Kinjalk and ma'am. It's always a pleasure. I hope to see you guys again soon. Okay, I'll take your leave now.
Sure.
Thanks.
So, Aditya Bhaiya, coming back to you. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. See, guys, first and foremost, I think competition is good as long as it's making you strive to become the best version of yourself. Don't think of this as competition against the person sitting right next to you or the person sitting across the table. It's a competition against yourself to be the best version of yourself. The way I like to put this is that try to be as internally competitive as possible. Try to be as internally collaborative as possible, to be as externally competitive as possible. What this means is that try and focus on first synergizing what you want to get out of this and what you need to put into this, and then bring that final product onto this competition where you're being the best version of yourself and not thinking about what the other guy is doing. Why is he getting more points than me? Don't care about the externalities. Focus on what you are doing first. Competition and everything will come in later. That's not the biggest thing in the world. And to that last point, and even like Raghav covers it very comprehensively, trust me, it seems like the world to you right now. And I love the passion that you all have, to win the best delegate. But understand the long-term implications of what you're doing today as well. Don't sweat too much over, not winning best del and just winning a high com and missing out by 1 or 2 points. Not to sound too corny, but in 4 years, it won't even matter. So don't stress too much about the competition, man. Like, take risk, enjoy yourself, express yourself in a conference rather than worrying about the best delegate, the best delegation award and competition stuff like that. Focus on enjoying and trust me, everything will, fall in place and will happen eventually.
Thank you so much, Priya, for answering that question. Now, Vedansh, we are coming on to you, especially because your batch is one of the batches which I have personally witnessed to be one of the most competitive and competent batches that I have seen at Martiniere. So, what do you have to say about it?
Uh, that you calling my batch as one of the most competent batches is a big thing, because very honestly, like I remember very very clearly, I remember having this discussion with Aditya when we were in the secretariat together in LMUN in 2016, as to how Raghav's batch, in our opinion, back then was like one of the most competitive and competent batches that, according to us, that Lamartine had ever seen. But coming down to this, and I think like here, I think most of you, I don't know about Abhiram and you, Kinjalk, but I think everyone else on the panel very clearly knows and remembers, even till date, the kind of competition that my batch had, because like in all these 6 batches, I think my batch, being the third one, is in conjunction and was in connect with like everyone here. So there were a lot of times when there was, as you like to call it, unhealthy competition. There was a lot of unhealthy competition. There was healthy competition. There were all sorts of things happening. And back in those days, those things used to mean the world to us. Like everything, ranging from, like MUNs and who's going to be in the secretariat, or who's going to be in the debating team, or who's going to be like in a position of authority in school. Like all those things used to matter the world to us. And I think that stands to be true for all of us on the panel here. But as Raghav, Aditya, and Naman also said before me, in a couple of years, you will just realize that by the time you will, all of you will graduate from school, you will just realize that all of it was, very trivial to sweat over. Like I have had my differences with my batchmates over these things. Raghav and Aditya were like, there were differences which required Raghav and Aditya to also mediate a lot of things. Then we relied on like our seniors to settle a lot of things for us, because we as a batch thought that we couldn't really work it out. But at the end of the day, these people whom I had differences with, these people whom I thought back then, and I'm pretty sure they also thought back then that things wouldn't really work out, and this might seem like the end of friendship. And there's this one particular person, I'm not going to name anyone, but he and I have been friends, like had been friends ever since class nursery. And then in class 12th, when we were in competition with each other, all of us really thought that things are not going to work out and this friendship is kind of over. But today, like I was just speaking to him yesterday, and friendships don't really end that way. Things that are this trivial, you realize it by the end of it that there's nothing that matters so much so as to break a friendship or a bond that you have cultivated over for like so many years. So I know like competition and all can be really taxing, and it can be really tiresome to manage everything out by the end of the day. But at the end of the day, all that you guys need to remember is that this is just an activity. It's like it might seem like the end of it all, but it's just an activity which the basic purpose of which is to help you grow into the best form of yourself, as Aditya said. And so breaking friendships and bonds over it, or becoming the kind of person who would, keep competition and being ahead of everyone, above everything else, is something that's not really in the purpose of the competition or this activity itself. It's good to want to succeed. It's good to be on top. It's good to want to achieve everything or be the best wherever you are. But everything comes with a cost. And that's a trade off that you need to realize at the end of the day if you are ready to make a lot. And I think like all of us here agree on one thing, and that is like the kind of bonds that I made in Lamartia, the kind of people that I got to know in Lamartia. I am never gonna forget them, or I'm not gonna forget those bonds, because those are things that are much more important than for the fact who made the Secretary General in my year. So it's I think it just comes down to these things, and these things will happen to all of you. But as Raghav also said, if you can just remember in the process, no one's asking you to be mature and not go through the process. But if during this entire process you can just remember that possibly 3 months from now, once you've graduated from school, once both of you meet each other at a farewell, it's not going to matter, because it's going to be the end of 14 years. You wouldn't worry about what happened at the end of that 1 year. You would be worrying about how those 14 years are coming to an end. And I think that's what's more important, and that is what you need to take back from it. So yeah,
Meanwhile,
I
me,
think
uh,
I
meanwhile,
agree.
meanwhile, me who's feeling sorry for ma'am who has to witness all these, shenanigans which are played by all of us. So Rajveer, coming on to you.
Yeah. So what I say is, listen, it's okay to be ambitious. It's completely okay to be ambitious. It's completely okay for you to want positions, for you to want titles and honors and everything else which seems important at this juncture of life. It's completely okay. It's understandable. I'd even say sometimes it's okay to be selfish in these things. It's okay, but it's really about thinking, or actually rethinking your position the moment you come to this precipice where you have to cut out someone from your life, or end a friendship for this. Because I think it's at that point you should realize you've gone too far. You're too much off into that deep end where it's really not worth it. It's not. And at the end of it, competition is good. You can go Darwinistic with it and say, the fittest survive and whatever. But at the end of it, um, it's really a lot more about, like everyone before me said, it's all a lot about those bonds that you make, the memories that you make. And just as importantly, it's about making sure that if those 14 years of your life are coming to an end,
Rajveer, you are not audible. Rajveer, you are not audible.
I was lucky. I will say this, and I will boast about it very frankly, that I was lucky to have a secretariat that was not plagued with any such problems throughout our tenure, that was able to work despite obviously frustrations which exist. You will have differences in opinions, you will have differences in approach, you will have people who are giving their times to multiple things, and sometimes you will feel as if you know uh, you need to confront someone, and all of that is fine. But it's really not worth ending friendships over. It's not worth uh, becoming rivals over or something like that. It's not going to be worth it. At the end of it, remember that if you are friends right now, or if you were friends at some time, something must have been there, something that was the foundation of that relationship, and that is worth preserving, even if it means taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. And really, that's all you can do, because at the end of it, you will feel jealous sometimes. You will feel the need to pursue things, even if it means stepping on someone's toes. Fine, do all of that, but remember that it shouldn't reach this level wherein you end up being an isolated, bitter individual because of these things. Because it's really worth it only when at the end of it you're filled with memories which include your friends. Because I remember more joyously, like best delegation awards that we won, because everyone was there. We were all celebrating. All of that has a lot of positive impact on me compared to any individual award I might have won. So I think really, if you do it as a collective, if you do it as a group of people, like-minded people working together, it really pays off in exponentially. It pays off exponentially. I think that's the only term for it. So yeah.
So my key takeaways from this particular discussion was that you have to be more collaborative rather than selfish. But yeah, when you are being selfish, you have to make sure that you do not reach that end point wherein you are breaking your friendships. It's not getting too much. You have to know your limits in that as well. So coming on to Abhiram. Yes, Abhiram. Also, till then, I request all of you to prepare your questions, because then we'll have a quick question answer round. We'll take in questions from you, and then we'll come to an end of this panel discussion. Yes, Abhiram, please go ahead.
So thanks, Kinjalk. I completely agree when Raajveer said that it's completely fine at our age to be ambitious, to strive to get the highest post at school for whatever thing we are working. But at the end of the day, we should realize, or we should be having a thought about, or an observation about this thing, that is that post, okay, we get that post, but is it worth breaking a friendship with someone? And at the end of the day, if you're mature enough, and if you're able to sort those things at the end of the day, it's completely fine. Because when you go further in life and you meet that person after say 5 or 6 years, you will not meet him as that person who held that position. You'll be meeting him just as an individual, or just as a friend. So what I realized after listening to all my seniors, because I have just ended about that process, I have yet to like contemplate about all those things. I just realized that it's all about how well we are able to sort those things, and how well we are able to interact and finish those things up and talk about other things that are important in life. So I guess that is something which we should do from our part, and I guess most of the times it will work. So that's most of it, I guess.
So in my perspective, all of the juniors, I advise all of you to look at the bigger picture, and we have Mr. McFarland here. All right, I'm letting him in. Yeah, till then, I mean, my personal advice to each one of you is to, look at the bigger picture rather than having a narrow mind towards things. And has joined. Yes. At Spotlight. He's having some trouble in connecting the audio, but I guess it's fine. Till then, you all can, drop in your questions in the chat box. So I urge each one of you to please drop your questions in the chat box so that we can address those questions one by one. Can you please suggest some ways to balance out both academics and co-curriculars out of your personal experiences? So which of the seniors would like to answer this question of this junior who is wondering how to maintain a balance between the two things, academics and co-curricular activities? Raghav Bhaiya, would you like to do that? Would you like to recommend him something?
Sure, I think we've already covered this topic in some depth. We have discussed that while academics are really important, and not just from the perspective of learning immediately and how it contributes to your understanding of things, but also from a college perspective, because it determines where you're going to be after school, right? So academics are super important, but I think we've also covered how you can't replace the value of co-curriculars and extracurriculars with academics, just how you and vice versa, right? Because there are different skills that you learn from both the different areas that you're expected to excel in, and there's really no trade-off, right, in that sense. So we've already discussed that as long as you have a good schedule that you're abiding by, as long as you're able to be honest with yourself about the sort of effort that you're putting in both the activities, it should not be a huge issue. And if at any point of time you feel like it's not going as planned, I mean, there is a lot of support available in school itself, right? I'm sure if you discuss it with your seniors who were facing the same issue, before you a year ago, they'll help you out with advice that will be more relevant than what I can give to you right now. So I would encourage you to do that and keep discussing it with people in school and your teachers, and I guess that should be good.
Thank you, Raghav Priya, for answering that. Now, the next question is from Arsalan. How to develop, yourself as a good delegate? So, Raajveer, would you like to answer that question?
Okay, I'll take a shot at it. Good delegate, subjective term. I mean, I assume you want to win awards, right? That's it. I I think there are very broad archetypes that people kind of fit in, right? There are people who are really good at lobbying. They're really good at creating, lobbies within their committees, and try and just move and shape the committee as they want and as they like. There are people who are really good at individual debating. I think for me, my personal skill in MUNs, which I employ the most, is really this argumentative style, and that is an option that you can go for. There are people who are really good at documentation. There are people who make documents and pieces of UN stuff which just looks legit, and more importantly, it has the ability to really further their own agenda. So that's like a big question to think about, right? But if it were up to you, what would you like identify as your main qualities? And once you are able to do so, once you're able to say, okay, I'm good at interacting with people on a person to person basis, I'm good at researching, I'm good at laying out an argument, I'm good at writing documents, I'm good at designing those particular documents in a particular format. Once you're able to kind of identify where you have your strongest leg, I think that's really where you should develop yourself more. It's really up to you to fill whatever archetype you want to, or even just break archetypes in general and just be who you are. And as long as you find that there is some return coming from those decisions you've taken, from the skills that you've honed, you're on the right path. And at the end of it, being a good delegate, really subjective things. Sometimes you meet people who won awards, but the way they win those awards, the belligerence they might show, all of those aspects, that might just put you off, and you won't consider them good delegates at the end of the day, right? Will you? So it has to do with owning the skills that you already have and really creating for yourself, I would say, like this mechanism that you can go through in a conference and really shine within that committee.
Thank you, Rajvi, for answering that. Now, there's a question from Divyansh that what are the career options out of this field? So, I would personally like Vedansh Bhaiya to, answer this question because he talked about it a little bit. So, would you like to elaborate as to how, they can look for career options which might, be beneficial for them after they have done some MUNs?
Okay, so like I saw this question a lot in the chat where some people are asking, can we choose MUN as a career option? And like quite honestly, like MUN as an activity is for holistic development. It's for your personal growth. It's so that you can become like the best version of yourself. So choosing a career in like this line of work, sure, you can go ahead and there are various options about being, a diplomat, and there are various other things like there were things that I learned at MUNs that encouraged me to take law as a career. So there are various things that you can do, but the career that you want to choose is something that I think only you can answer. So I don't think like I'm you know in the right place to answer which career is the best career to take when it comes to your interest in MUNs. But if I can tell you something, it is that a lot of things that you learn at these conferences, whether they are related to your academics, or they are related to you growing as a person, how well you speak, how proficient you are, or how well you can communicate. All these things do contribute to the kind of person and the kind of line of work that you will ultimately be choosing. Because wherever you go, you will be required to interact. Wherever you go, you will be required to be confident with whatever profession or career you take up. So I think like seeing this as a career option, you should actually see this as an activity that La Martiniere also tries to propagate for your holistic development, for your personal growth. And then later, whenever it comes to deciding a career or a profession, you should just take up what interests you the most. Now, there are people to whom like MUNs mean so much that they want to take something related to things that you learn at MUNs as a career choice itself. then you should go ahead. And there are various options, like you can crack the IFS, you can take up law and go into international law. You can take up other courses related to social science and take like political science or something, and go into international relations and all those things. The options are endless, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is for it to fascinate you so much, for it to interest you so much, that there is nothing else apart of it. So instead of thinking of MUNs to be like the end of all, take it as an activity which helps you grow. And then later, if it interests you enough to have it as a career option too, then surely go ahead in that.
Thank you so much, Vedansh Bhaiya, for answering that question. Now, there's a question about nervousness. So, I would personally like Aditya Bhaiya to answer this question because he talked about him being a nervous child, shy, speaking in front of audiences. So, how do you, answer this question? How would you like to help Govind, overcome this problem? And I'm sure that many people face this problem of nervousness and speaking in front of large audiences. So, how to tackle that problem? Aditya Bhaiya, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I don't remember who asked that question, but thank you for that because I would love to reflect on my own personal experiences. As mentioned previously, I was very shy in middle school. When I attended my first conference, I did speak until many hours into the conference. And trust me, when you're in a model UN, when you're in class 8th and ninth, it's very easy for you to not participate in a conference and be intimidated by, 11th or 12th graders, being very aggressive MUNers and, lobbying extensively, all the fun stuff. All I can tell you, two big things actually I'll tell you, two best tips I can give you would be one, in your first few hours of the conference, or, even in your first few conferences actually, speak less, hear more. Try and learn from those delegates you're getting intimidated by. Try and see what works for them. Try and see what does not work for them, and try and see how you can absorb that and make it work for you. And then going forward, use those skills. It's always best to learn from people who are best in the business, right? So adapt to that environment, and adopt those skills they're talking about. And secondly, try and participate as much as possible. As mentioned, it's very easy not to participate, but the only way going forward would be to, kind of break that barrier and go beyond that and try and participate and talk to as many people as possible. Speak as much as you can to, kind of acquire that confidence and demonstrate kind of your presence in the room. And after that, trust me, it's smooth sailing. It's only the first one or two speeches which are kind of, nervous and you feel a bit shaky. Beyond that, trust me, it's all smooth sailing. You'll be in a good position. So don't stress too much about it. Just try and participate as much as possible and learn from the best in the business.
Thank you so much, Aditya Bhaiya, for answering that question. And I hope that it helps most of the people who have the problem of nervousness. And, talking about it, you need to also understand that it's not always about you being the leader. Sometimes your traits are to be a better team player, so it's not necessary for you to lead everywhere you go. You can also be a good team player, and there are certain people who might not win, but when they are around, other people who are around them start winning. So there are different traits that people have. And yes, we have Mr. McFarland here. He has joined his audio. So sir, would you like to say something? All right, so sir is in. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
I'm audible. I'm trying to see if I can be visible, but I'm working on a silly phone and I'm not very sure how exactly it works.
So look at.
But I am starting video and there I am. Okay. And Kinjalk is looking nice in his uniform. How absolutely lovely to see Aditya from halfway around the globe. I'm Krishnan Shukla, who is halfway next to us, and I'm not very proficient with this, but I did see Vedansh and heard him speaking a little while ago. I saw Bisht. I don't know what this girl's name is, what Bisht she's become, but and a few others. Okay, but I have been listening to the younger boys ask questions, and my comments are directed to these boys. Okay, you will learn so much more boys of class 8 especially, from your former Secretary Generals, than you will learn from us as teachers and so on. These are boys who have been through the grind. I just now heard Aditya say how for his first MUN, he went through many hours before he even opened his mouth. But then he was able to rise to the level of a Secretary General. I heard Kinjalk talk about being a team player and how it depends on the kind of person you are, right? Would you like to see yourself in a leadership role? Are you very content and comfortable being a team player? I'm delighted that you guys are discussing these things, because while they may not be related to the immediate situation in Afghanistan, they definitely are preparing you to be able to deal with all these things, because all these things do affect us at some time. Okay, so I'm turning my audio off, maybe my video off, because you see I'm so handsome that you guys will be very disturbed. But I'm going to continue to listen in, if I may, and don't think that I am eavesdropping or prying. I am learning from your questions and learning from the answers that my senior students, former students are also giving. Okay, so all the best, guys, and lovely to see you in person.
So thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts with all of us. Now, we'll be coming to an end of this session. Now, I'll be dropping one last, point where we can have a little bit of discussion around. We'll have one more roundtable where everyone can give their thoughts about it, and that is the role of, teachers and our principal, and the general liberty that we talked about in La Martiniere. What is your point of view about that? How it has been developing over years? Because see, today also Mr. McFarlane joined in quite late. Ma'am Zeba joined in after some time. We had already started this session, so it was all about the students who were handling it. So this has been happening before as well. The other day I got to know how in the first MUN that we had, Raghav Bhaiya wasn't actually well that day, so he had to come to school, and he was all wearing mask and he was away from everyone, so he was following all the norms which we are following right now. So I would personally want to know how interaction with these teachers has personally affected all of you, and what advice would you like to give to the students? Because I have personally noticed one thing, that there are certain students who are quite rude to their teachers sometimes, and it actually happens to all of us, the best of us, because sometimes we are being scolded for something which we might not have done, so we think that there is a bitter relationship between the teacher and us, but later on we realize, I mean, I personally have realized that it wasn't actually I should have looked at the bigger picture, right? So I would like to know your opinion on the same, and by that we'll be ending today's discussion. So Raghav Bhaiya, we'll start from you.
Sure. That's a good question, Kinjalk, because I think through MUNs and the sort of time and effort that goes into organizing an MUN, we really got this fabulous opportunity of becoming close to so many teachers who we otherwise wouldn't have in a classroom environment. I mean, here were individuals who, for our, betterment and for the sake of our goals and objectives, were willing to be on call at 1 a.m. in the night because something came up that was unanticipated. So I think as students, when we're blessed with teachers who are really willing to invest themselves into not just the activity but into us, right? It's something that should be at the back of our minds when we are conducting ourselves, and also handling the responsibility that's thrust upon us, right? So we've already discussed how we are super privileged to have the opportunity of just taking on every single organizational role that is required in the conference, and how it helps us in so many different ways, right? So I think it's important for us as students to be honest with our teachers, right? Because one thing that I've realized in school is that a teacher only treats you like a child if you behave like a child. right? I mean, if you behave like an adult who's willing to take on responsibility and who is honest with the work that they are doing, right? I have personally never seen a teacher, back away from that, or not be welcoming in the sort of support that they offer. So, I mean, for example, in the first conference that we had, right, the first LMUN, the conference you're talking about, Kinjalk, was actually before LMUN, right? That was the first IIMUN, where I was sick on the days of the conference. But when we talk about the first LMUN, right, that was a learning experience for all of us. And I remember Ma'am Siddiqui telling me back then that because of the different conferences that we'd attended, she'd actually taken more trips with me than her own children, right, across India. And fortunately, we were able to travel not just to different parts in India, but also abroad, right? So, I mean, we personally in that batch, a lot of us, share a very special relationship with ma'am because of the different engagements that we had. And of course, with Mr. McFarland, right? I mean, I see him come here and crack a joke and make everybody smile. And it really takes me back to my school days as well, even though it's been 6 years. Right. But I think the bottom line is this, that, here are teachers who are willing to invest their time and effort into you, who are willing to improve your school life, who are willing to give you opportunities which, they had never thought of when they were back in school. Because I've spoken to not just teachers, but we've all spoken to, our parents about what school was like for them, right? And we've come a really long way from there to here because of the effort that people before us have put in. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, respect that, and treat the responsibilities that you have with that level of seriousness. And I think, yeah, that's one way to ensure that you learn the most and are able to get the best out of this experience.
Thank you, Raghav, for answering that question, because at times we all think that a teacher is being biased towards another child. But what we need to understand is that opportunities are being presented to all of us on silver platter. And all we need to do is see whether we are eligible to take it or not. And then it is our prerogative to make sure that we respect those opportunities that we get and then, make the best out of it. So coming on to Aditya Bhaiya.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And see, hindsight is 2020. I would be lying if I tell you that I did not like it when teachers used to scold me for maybe, missing some classes for MUNs or, all the other fun stuff back in school. But do remember, guys, that all of these teachers, literally every single one of them at La Martiniere, have your best interest in their minds. They want you to succeed and grow. They're not scolding you for their own sake. They're scolding you because they want you to succeed and think that's the best, way to go about way to go about your school life and maybe your professional life at that point. So remember that all you need to do to reciprocate that is to work alongside them in a respectful manner. Trust me, it's very worth it. I feel very privileged. I think privilege is the very correct word which Raghav uses. I feel very privileged to have made and developed those bonds when I was in school with all those teachers in my capacity, as participating as a delegate or even on the secretariat. All of these teachers, I remember talking to them at 2 a.m. in the morning because maybe some food preparation wasn't done adequately for the next morning. Point is, all of these teachers were available for me and my team and for the entire society and for all the students in La Martiniere at any time of the day. And that is humongous. You won't find that anywhere else. At least I can speak for some of the other schools, but for La Martiniere, that's an insane opportunity to develop those close relationships with teachers. And even today, I feel very proud to say this, that whenever I achieve something in life, the first people I tell my news to, I break my news to, are my teachers before my parents actually. And I think that speaks volumes about the quality of teachers and the quality of relationships you form at La Martiniere.
That was a really beautiful answer by Aditya Bhaiya. Now moving on to Vedansh Bhaiya. You have the floor.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything more that I can add to it than Raghav and Aditya. But there is one incident that I would love to tell you all. It's a very short instance from back like in 2017. It was 2 days before like LMUN 2017, and I remember there was some mess up with the placards and the flags that came after printing, and we were really worried. So we decided to sit together, and there were, like, by we I mean not just the secretariat, but there were a lot of members of the LMU and OC who also sat down with us, and we started at 7 in the evening, and we sat together till 3 in the morning in school itself, in the library, and we were just sitting and trying to sort the entire fiasco out. And by the end of it, it was really possible for us to, get a hang of everything that was happening, and then leave for, our homes to rest and all, in a very calm manner. And then later at 7 in the morning, there was, I think, Vellum girls or Vellum boys, one of the two. They were coming in because they were coming one day before the conference itself, because they wanted to, roam around the school, and then they wanted to see Lucknow. And we also agreed for it because, as you guys know, Lamartine is known for its hospitality. So we agreed, and they also came at 7 in the morning. And then before they could actually come, all these people who were sitting at 3 in the night together, who went back home at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, they were all there in school before the bus for this school entered at 7. And now the reason why I'm telling you about this is not to brag about how diligent you are, but it's only because, when you are bestowed with that kind of responsibility, you realize how important it is for you to show up. You realize how important it is for you to act. And that kind of responsibility, that kind of demeanor, that kind of, seriousness towards whatever you take up in life is something that I can rightfully say I learned at Lamartine. I think I owe it to all these teachers. I owe it to Mrs. Zeba Siddiqui. I owe it to Mr. McFarland. I owe it to all the other teachers. When I actually went back to school after graduating, and I told my teachers that I was pursuing law from business college, and I told them that this is what I plan on doing, I think they were more happy for me than my parents itself. And I think that speaks volumes about the kind of bond that we share with our faculty in school. So I think, like, at the end of the day, what all of you need to remember is that you are given that kind of responsibility and liberty to make decisions. As Kinjalk rightfully said, this is a student's run show. And like, I remember back in my days as well, Mr. McFarland used to say the same thing, that everything in Lamartine is a student run show, and nothing in Lamartine happens without the students actually take up the initiative. So it's a great thing because you learn how to, make those decisions which can benefit a larger crowd than yourself. And I think that's a very important thing to learn in life at such an early stage, because once you learn it, in your initial years of classes 8, 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th, it's easier for you to accustom yourself to this society as a whole. I know these things might sound very utopian and might sound very idealistic, but it is true. It makes it easier for you to gel into this society as a whole when you are required to take up responsibility later in your life. And I think all of that is because your faculty in school, your principal in school, everyone else in school is ready to support you and is ready to be there for you. Even in situations where your parents might tell you that, you can't participate in MUNs, or you shouldn't do this, you should just focus on academics. These faculty and the principal, these people are there in order to make sure that, your holistic development is the one that is being focused upon, because quite rightfully, it is the one thing that, in my opinion, matters much more than just academics. So I think that is my take on it.
Thank you so much for that insightful answer. And now I'll come to Raajveer, who has shared a very special relationship with all his teachers, and especially, handling the night crisis. As Vedansh Bhaiya said, that we all need support at times. So that was the time when we needed the most support from these teachers. And I remember all of us working at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and ma'am, and all the other teachers being present over there. So what's your take on this particular thing?
Yeah, when I was hearing these answers from past secretaries-general, I was just wondering how much detail I could actually go into of that night. But before that, there's another thing, right? I wanted to talk about. So, it is surreal sometimes when you think about how big the society is, because I remember looking at the recruitment drive for just members of the logistic team, right? That is just one arm of the entire experience that is Alman, and that is the logistics team, and it's probably the biggest one. And seeing Sujib and his fellow uh, uh, I would say his friends working together to organize such a big mob of of students and getting them organized, uh, handing out work details, ensuring that they were in uniform, every single thing, right? And you think about how big Elman is, right? But there's always this another aspect that kind of gets sidelined in uh, just the perception of it. And I think that is the entire administration, the faculty, every single individual who's connected to La Martiniere in some way, who ends up being this support mechanism for this event to happen. So when you have that meeting with the members of the staff, you see how much bigger Elman really is. But then you stop to think about it, and you think about every single member of the security force who looks after the premises, ensures that students who come during the night crisis, the midnight crisis, remain safe on campus. You count those people, you count every single member of the kitchen staff who ends up making the meals that we're known for in the entirety of the circuit, known for the kind of opulence that we end up showing in terms of the food and hospitality we give. And you think about just how many more people are involved in that. And going back to that night, that fateful night, I think so Ma'am Gordon was my class teacher. She, for the past 2 years, had been extremely frustrated with me, Pratik, anyone in her Arul, people who were in the secretariat, and then also in her class, because we were out for Elman, right? We were doing this and that and organizing this and that. And so there was always this, I will say, cat and mouse game that was happening. But on that night, when our hearts were actually broken, we were in tatters, wondering how are we going to manage things, how are we going to just work through this, make sure our people to get out of the city, get out on time, and under our supervision, everything. So you had Ma'am Gordon, reassuring us, telling us that things will be fine, being there and feeling our trepidation. Dr. Zeba Siddiqui, there to talk to members of the executive board who were panicking, who were in fright, and who, like, you've seen those videos, I assume, of people in Afghanistan, right? As they crowd airports trying to find a way out. And the situation, while obviously not as serious in hindsight, seemed just as serious. It seemed like something bad was going to happen. You had the curfew, you had this and that, and people were panicking. And you had these members of staff supporting not only us, but people who were much older than us, but still panicking because they were in this unknown city, not sure of what was going to happen. I remember Mr. Gomes being there, patrolling the entire premises, making sure that people staying on campus were finding their accommodations, were able to stay there secure until we found them some way out of the city. We were able to find tickets or not, and every single thing, the coordination that was required at that moment. And you end up just wondering exactly how many hands are really required for Elman to happen. And when everything else starts to fail, just how many support structures are there around you to make sure that you are able to prop yourself up, make sure that people are safe, make sure that people are comfortable, make sure that the reputation of Elman, the reputation of the institution, and your personal value attached to every single thing remains safe and secure. And I think that really is, I would, for me at least, the quintessential moment of understanding just how important every single person, be it our principal, our vice principal, uh, our head of department for the middle school, be it members of the office, the college office, members of just the teaching staff in general, every single one of these individuals, how much they worked and for with us, cooperated with us, made sure that we were reminded when we were making mistakes, but in that gentle manner where we don't feel belittled or shown to be wrong, all of those things. And you really end up thinking just how important every single person really is to Elman happening in the way that it happens. And really, that's the only thing I can really say about any of this, to be honest.
Thank you so much, Raji, for that emotional, answer of yours. And I mean, I totally agree with you. Plus, we need to understand that it's all about collaboration. It's not a one-man show. Whatever we organize, whatever we have been organizing for the past so many years, it's about all of us collaborating with each other. And there are so many people who work behind the scenes whom we don't know personally, who give their, heart and soul to those 3 days, making sure that from making the bed for all the delegates who are staying at school, for from to making food in the kitchen. So it's a huge family, I would say. And now I come to Abhiram. And Abhiram, I would like you to speak about this, especially when everything went online and teachers weren't very comfortable as to how things were going to happen. So what's your take on this entire situation? And then we'll probably end this session.
Thank you, Kinjalk. So I still remember that day when the notification came from the principal secretariat. I was on call with Kinjalk that all the events are cancelled due to the pandemic. So we were like discussing among our secretariat that whether we should go online, we should not, because at the end of the day, it's this image of Martiniere and LMUN which was at stake if we go online, because we need to still maintain that tradition of that academically centered conference and everything. So I still remember Ma'am Siddiqui and Ms. McFarlane motivating us to go online. And like Raghav said, like when they were organizing their first LMUN, so it's not always that if we do something new, it's need to be at the largest scale. We start from the small, and that was exactly the same words of Ma'am Siddiqui to me. Like, let's do this, and I'm sure that you all will succeed in it. So what I understood after all these conversations from my seniors is that the teachers trust us, and it's our responsibility to maintain that trust. Like Raghav very rightly mentioned that teachers will treat us like a child if we behave like one. So it's like if they are trusting us, we should be honest and we should like maintain that trust. And that's like most of it. So at Lamartine, what I have learned is that like Mr. McFarland always say that it's all the student-run organization and students do all the thing. But at the back of our mind, we know that if any crisis strikes in, we have our teachers at the back who are more experienced than us to handle real life situations. So yes, it will be managed. So all those, so many people are involved in such a big event. So at the back of our mind, psychologically, we are aware that if something goes wrong, our teachers are with us. Like I was a part of the 2019 Secretariat as well when the conference was cancelled, and I saw so many teachers were there at night, at 11 at the night to support us. And I still remember Mr. McFarland and Mr. Cherry sir editing the video for LMUN 2021 till 12 midnight. So all these things, when we see, when we have a thought about it, we see how important is the role of our teachers and how important it is for us to maintain that trust so that they can give us the same responsibility and free hand to do things like we are doing currently. So that was most my take on it.
Thank you, Abhiram, for that answer. And I'm actually very thankful to each and every one of you who was present here, because if you all would have not kept their trust, then they wouldn't have been able to trust us, the newer generations. So thank you for keeping that trust, doing things which which were up to their expectations, and thank you for respecting them so that they could expect the same from us, and they could trust us with things which are new endeavors, so-called new endeavors. So now, Mr. McFarland and Dr. Zeba Siddiqui, is there something that you would like to add at this moment before we end today's session? Yes, ma'am.
Boys, it's always my pleasure, and I have learned so much from you all, each one of you. And it's not that your growth, I have seen myself learning so much. And most important thing is each one of you is so talented. And all the best, do well in life. And I can say that what you learned today, what you said today, will be a good example for these children who are listening to you. You were really, it was nice of you to be here today and guide these boys. Thank you, boys.
Thank you so much.
And just closing thoughts. As I said, even though I've just been in the room for about 15 or 20 minutes, I've definitely got the drift of what is happening. It has been, I'm sure, a great morale booster for all our younger pupils. And I do hope that they will be tremendously inspired. Pandemic or no pandemic, you still have the same things going on. Now, grab the opportunity, grab the situation, and make the best use of the platforms that are being provided to you. Kinjalk was a very gracious host today, and our guests from the last 7 or 8 years of MUN at La Martiniere are very, very gracefully and gratefully received. When you were talking about opportunities and how things are done as a team, I am constrained to think about one particular boy who was not a Secretary General, who was definitely in charge of the logistics, etc., but who kept in the background on that so-called fateful night when we had to close down the entire program. I refer to Ishan Bhasin. I think he is now studying, but the kind of cool that he displayed taught me a thing or two. He is young enough to be a grandson, leave alone a son, but he was able to deal with each of the situations that came up. He took them in his stride and was able to multitask so well. These are opportunities that you boys will also be getting. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't know whether the challenges will be greater or whether the challenges will be very similar. But in every case, like a good Boy Scout, be prepared for whatever is to come and take it in your stride. Thank you, alumni, for coming together. I know we can always bully you to be able to do this, and I'm very grateful for all that you have done. Over to Kinjalk, and thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, with this, we'll be ending today's session. Thank you so much, everyone who took out their precious time and addressed the young students. The recording of this session will be uploaded on YouTube as well as Facebook. So all the viewers who are viewing this and are not a part of the Martiniere, best of luck to you, and you can start something new in your own school as well. As Raghav Bhaiya stated, how he started model UNs in the Martiniere, you can start it in your own school. And if you need any guidance, any help, any support, feel free to text us, because we'll be there to help you out and establish a society or an activity in your school. And that's something which is really important, because that will lead to a holistic development of generations of students, like we can see happening over here. So thank you so much to everyone who attended this session. Thank you to all the children, and I hope that we will and the future children will carry on the legacy which has been established by all of you. So thank you so much. Good night. Take care.